Hey, you probably have heard the quote that you should be getting 1% better every day. This quote comes from James Clear, the author of the book Atomic Habits. And the quote goes a little bit on the lines of, if you get 1% better every day, once you get done, you're going to be 37 times better than when you started. And if you get 1% worse, you're probably going to get closer to zero. And I would like to talk about this quote because I have seen many people referencing it and people even having it printed out in their walls to remind themselves of improving all the time. So let's start with what are the good things of this quote and this attitude, and maybe what are the not so good things of this quote, and what are my thoughts about it. So the first one is that I think that from the point of view of wanting to develop continuously, this quote is great. This is something that I really believe in. I really like to try to do all the time, but realistically, not all the time I'm doing. But I try to always get better, learn new things, adopt them, and also implement them in my ways of working. And not just in my ways of working, also in my hobbies. I like to, whenever I'm doing skiing or doing gymnastics or doing whatever, I like to learn new skills, even if I'm not very young anymore. But still, it makes it very motivating, it makes it very engaging, and actually I'm developing in those skills, both work-wise and both in my life. And this idea of continuous improvement is something that really fits also with different principles like agile, design thinking, and so on, that are promoting you to learn more, know more, and be able to actually adopt and use that knowledge into your work to make your decisions, your implementations, your products, whatnot. On the other hand, I think that this quote has some cons. First one being that it is not realistic to improve 1% every day, because not every day is the same day. Some days you have high motivation, some days you don't have very high motivation. Some days, even when you have a high motivation, you plateau. You cannot go so fast or develop so fast as before. If you have gone to the gym and you are trying whatever you are trying, new skills, new lifts, so on, you want to lift more, whatever it is that you do, at some point you will plateau, and at some point the development won't come as fast. Development comes fast when you are not so knowledgeable in a certain area. When you start to get more knowledgeable, development comes way slower, and at some point there can be even diminishing returns. When no matter how hard you push to learn and to move forward and to develop that skill, it actually really is developing very little. And yes, I'm aware that you can also apply this as a philosophy, as I had to get better in any skill. And once I get better or decent at a certain skill, I'll move on to the next skill. True, that's something that it can happen. But as I say, for me, 1% per day, I know that probably this is a little bit of a thrown out number, but it is definitely not realistic. And thinking that you are going to get 37 times better whenever you think about any skill that you might have and that you can practice in your own hobbies, getting 37 times better is a lot. And you can see that in the very early stages if you start to do a new skill. But if you are just designing a certain skill, getting 37 times better at that skill is seriously not realistic. And this applies the same for work skills as well. Unless you really don't know anything about coding and you take coding as something that you want to learn, maybe in 1 year you can be 37 times better than when you started. But it's really difficult to measure. So how realistic is that number? Yeah, it's kind of a nice guideline, but it's seriously not realistic in my opinion. Maybe there's a science. If there's a science, please link it. I've never found it. Now, another problem that I see with this is that it also goes very linked to an attitude that there is nowadays, that it's of consuming information. And it sounds like consuming information nowadays is the same as getting knowledge. And those are not the same things. Knowledge is when you know how to apply that information. Just consuming information, it's a very nice thing, but that doesn't mean that you know how to apply it. And that's a very big problem because applying that information and getting it to be knowledge means that you have to have friction, and that takes more than a day. It takes quite a long time when you are actually trying to get good at a certain skill. This can happen when you are trying new hobbies, when you are learning to, do a front flip. You might see how to learn how to do it. Try to do it yourself. It's going to take you probably weeks, if not more, to get there, and especially to get the nail down. If you think about work, same thing. It's very easy to say that I had to be strategic. I had to set up a strategy. How do I set a strategy? I had to figure out what are the problems or the roadblocks that are preventing me to get to my vision. Great. Put that in practice. I'm pretty sure that when you try to put it in practice, it's going to take you a lot of iterations and several failures. This is the same when you're trying to adopt Agile in your company for the first time, especially if you're in a waterfall company. It's going to take you time and you are going to fail. Sometimes you are going to move forward, sometimes you are going to step backwards and then move forward more. This is a normal way of learning and a normal way of getting information into knowledge. And finally, I would like to say one thing. This is a rule that it applies quite well to individuals that are starting more in their career. If you want to be in a more advanced position, you should not look so much about improving yourselves, which you should, by the way. Don't take that as I don't think that you should not improve yourself. But if you are thinking about career-wise and this recommendation, if you are in a company and you want to be like a manager, or you're already a manager and you want to be a director or an executive or whatnot, you, of course, had to develop yourself, but you had to think about how to develop the teams and how to develop the company. And this takes me to, well, maybe there's a better approach on if you are thinking from the point of view of work, it is much better that you concentrate on how can you improve how, for example, your team works, or your organization works, or how your whole company works. This is going to have much higher returns than, for example, me as an individual improving 1% in my knowledge every day, because you are spreading that as throughout the organization, and this has a compounding effect when you are getting all the organization to be better. And this is what is key for a company, for a business. If you're looking for a promotion, this is going to be way more important than you just only yourself getting better. Then you are in the expert field, which is completely fine. Some people want to be expert and individual contributors, and that's completely okay. For people that are looking more for like managerial or director type of roles, I think that you have to change the perspective and maybe not be selfish in the way that you are just getting yourself better, but how can you help others get it better? And I think that that should be the secret for leaders. It's not about managing people. It's about helping others getting better. And this is going to have a return on the customers, on the business, on the company. I think also this idea of having to improve every single day, it puts a heavy burden on people. And I don't think that everybody's ready for doing this. If you think about how can I help my product team, my agile team to actually get better? How can I help them to develop? You cannot realistically ask them to improve 1% every day. It's not going to happen. Out of many retros that I have been doing in the past, realistically, when you see that you have a retro and that you find areas where you can develop, the best approach is that for the next retro, you focus on improving 1 or 2 items. And that's it. That's going to have much more returns, probably, than if you try to solve all the 10 great ideas that your team came up with. Because realistically, not everybody is going to take ownership on improving. Not everybody is going to have time, and it's better that you secure 1 or 2 and actually develop those. Those are going to start having a change and a perspective change also on the team to understand that they can improve. And they are going to be more willing to participate and to learn and maybe to drive change in the future. And no, not everybody is going to do this. That's just a given. Not everybody in the teams are going to be willing to take that step, and that's completely fine. We're all different. There's going to be people that are more willing to drive change and improve the ways of working, processes, the way the team works, or themselves. And other people, they're not going to be so willing to do that. If the team improves, then they will improve with the team. That's why it's important to improve the team. So as I said, for me, one of the best ways of having or developing myself and teams and in the ways of working is to actually do it through the retros. I think the retros is a great tool, or are a great tool to actually develop teams and processes and efficiencies within that team. And of course, that should have an impact on the company, the business, the users, the customers. And it's good to concentrate on just one or two things at a time and make sure that those ones are really actually being developed and really being improved. And yes, not every retro you're going to succeed. That's just life. And sometimes, yes, and oftentimes you will improve a certain way of working, which is great. And people will really appreciate it. So how about you? Have you read this book? How have you heard about James Clear? Are you using this rule of improving your sales 1% per day? If you want to know more about my thoughts of how information is kind of burying our sales nowadays and it rarely transforms into knowledge, go check out this video. I will see you in the next one. And remember, stay safe.